I'm Carolyn Costello in New York with breaking news this afternoon. Sources confirming to ABC News that one of two escaped inmates from a prison in upstate New York, on the run for 3 weeks now, has been shot and killed by authorities. That prisoner, convicted killer Richard Matt. The second escaped killer, David Sweat, still on the run. Authorities have been hot on the trail of the two men, finding evidence that they had broken into a cabin, police say, in the town of Malone, New York, just 10 miles from the Canadian border, where the men were apparently headed. Let's go to ABC's Aaron Kotersky following this story for us. Aaron, what do we know at this hour? We're hearing, Aaron, that police announced recently at a press conference that they got two major leads within the last 24 hours. What can you tell us about that? I understand that authorities found Matt's DNA in that cabin, but not Sweat's DNA. Any reason to believe they were both in that cabin, or do police believe that they were separated at that time? And Aaron, as you mentioned, the men were believed to be headed to Canada. This cabin just 10 miles from the border. They were pretty close. And Aaron, what's the situation for residents in that area right now? I understand they were warned. A massive warning went out at some point today.
Well, look, there's active gunfire, so I think anybody who's living nearby is being warned to stay indoors and only open the door for a verified law enforcement officer. But this is deep woods, sparsely populated in the woods, rugged terrain where in some cases you can only see a couple of feet in front of you. It appears that this is going down near populated areas, but perhaps not right in them. And that's the hope of law enforcement. If it did come to gunfire, they didn't want it anywhere near people.
And Aaron, if we can circle back for a moment, take us through once again when police located Matt and any details we know about how it all played out, how and why officers opened fire.
I don't know why they opened fire. We don't know whether there was some kind of confrontation or whether they thought he was simply running away and they weren't going to catch him. There are a number of reasons why the state police could open fire in this particular case. But nonetheless, it was just after 4 p.m. Eastern time when law enforcement officers who had been pursuing the two escapees shot and killed Richard Matt. Matt was not with David Sweat at the time, we're told, but now police have a good vicinity on David Sweat, and they're hoping to bring him in, or perhaps if it ends the way Matt did, shoot him as well.
And authorities have been saying all along that these men are very dangerous. They were in those hunting cabins that, as you said, were stocked full of weapons, of guns, believed to be armed and dangerous. If you can, take us back to the history of these two convicted killers, Richard Matt in prison. Take us through what he was convicted of, the crimes he was convicted of committing. Thank you, Aaron. I want to move on now to ABC crime and terror analyst Brad Garrett, who has also been following this story. Brad, your reaction to the turn of events this afternoon?
Speed on Sweat at this point, we'll have to see.
Well, authorities are saying that they have a pretty good idea, according to some of our correspondents, of where Sweat is. You mentioned you don't think that the two have been split up for very long. We know that authorities only found DNA from Matt inside that last burglarized cabin. Why do you think they haven't been split up for very long? What's Okay, Brad, stand by for us if you will. Also following this intense manhunt for us from Malone, New York, ABC's Lindsay Janis. Lindsay? ABC's Lindsay Janis with an update for us. Let's go back to ABC News crime and terror analyst Brad Garrett. Brad, Lindsay saying that there were two major leads in the last 24 hours for police. First, them getting word that a cabin had been burglarized. They go to the cabin, find the DNA, and then they find stuff that the two men, or at least one of the men, left behind. Are they getting sloppy at this point? Was it only a matter of time before?
You're out, sometimes on the weekend, etc. It's not uncommon for people in those settings to keep, at the very least, long guns, rifles, in those settings. So my guess is they have been able to find cabins, stay in them for a period of time, and then possibly move. And as they have gone along, each time you do that, you run the risk that the police, the owner, a neighbor, someone is going to see you. So my guess is the following: as they were able to get lucky on tracking DNA.
Not to mention the crimes that these two men were convicted of, and the fact that they've had access to numerous weapons, apparently, according to police, from these cabins. What do we know about Sweat, the crime he was convicted of committing, and just how dangerous he is?
Well, I mean, these two guys, have both been convicted of very violent murders. One of them even involved dismemberment. And so you're talking guys who just don't care. And their ability to manipulate, control, if you will, has worked for them, at least in their world. That's the reason they got out. Their ability to manipulate both Palmer and Mitchell to get what they wanted and eventually get out of the prison actually is quite impressive. But I share that with you because the level of manipulation here is quite high. But there's an important component to this. People that act like these two do, that have the history that they both have, are clearly both what they call antisocial personalities, which means they have a zero conscience. So who they hurt, when they hurt them, how they hurt them, they don't care. And that makes them particularly dangerous in this type of setting when you're trying to catch them.
Brad, the men on the run for 21 days. This case, this story has been fascinating from the beginning, from the way they escaped, from their relationships with the prison workers. Take us through some of the most interesting and fascinating points of this case from the beginning, from how they escaped to their relationship with that one prison worker.
Well, it's fascinating for starters that they were able to cut, think about this, Carolyn, the number of holes. They had to cut holes in the back of their cells. They're not in the same cell, so you're talking 2 holes. They get out, apparently go into an area, a common area where there's a catwalk. They then have to break through a brick wall. Once they break through a brick wall, then they have to cut into a piping system, sewer system, if you will, cut a hole big enough to get into it, then traverse it to the manhole cover, and then cut another hole to get out. They would have had to have plans. They would have had to know how far to walk before they cut the next hole. And the time it would take to do that, it's almost unimaginable that you could do all that cutting and brick busting inside a prison and nobody knew about it. So I don't think we've probably seen the end of the number of potential correctional people involved in this case. And the other people that would have to help them would be the other inmates. They would have to be lookouts, tell them somebody's coming, stop the noise, whatever it might be. But it's very impressive as to what they were able to pull off when you consider what they had to go through to get to that manhole cover.
You mentioned the level of manipulation, the psychopathic, sociopathic tendencies of these two men. Does it surprise you that they were able to manipulate so many people, from prison workers to other inmates, to help them carry out this escape?
No, because that's how they've gotten through life. Antisocial personalities can be the most charming people in the world, because think about this. If you had no guilt, you never felt guilty, you only felt what you wanted and needed, and in a very false way tried to project onto other people that you're empathic, you want to take care of them, you want to help them. It's just all baloney. I mean, they don't ever feel that. They don't feel anything. They only care about themselves. If you feel that inside, your ability to push forward and be charismatic and charming can actually be quite intoxicating. And particularly if you target vulnerable people. I don't know a lot about Joyce Mitchell, but I think she fits that profile as somebody that was vulnerable, weak, wanted attention, and so they both poured on the attention to her. Palmer's another story. We'll have to know more about him as time moves on. But that's what they target weak people and then manipulate them. They do the same thing in relationships. They do the same thing in jobs. That's why they never can do anything very long, because eventually people are fed up with them.
And let's talk a little bit more about Joyce Mitchell and her alleged involvement in the prison escape. What do we know about her relationship with the two inmates and how she is accused of helping them?
Well, it's been reported there may be some version of an intimate relationship between one or both of them. And, you know, what that does is, if that's true, is it shows what boundary they've been able to push her over as far as clearly a huge violation of prison rules for any of that sort of behavior to go on. So they basically have compromised her and maybe emotionally manipulated her. And I'm going to guess, saying, look, we'll get out of here, we'll take you with us, you know, we'll get into Canada or some other location and lead a different life. So on a fantasy level, maybe in her mind, wow, all this attention, two guys really care about me, etc. And so it played out. Now, obviously, she got cold feet at some point and didn't show up at the manhole cover. But, you know, that's how they got there. This didn't start a month or two ago. This has been going on for months, if not years. The building up of this relationship with her until they could get her to the point they could manipulate her into helping them escape.
And, you know, quickly, the alleged plot to kill Joyce Mitchell's husband, he's stating through a lawyer that he was absolutely blown away and shocked by those allegations.
And, you know, and we don't know in what context that was discussed. In other words, did Joyce bring it up? Did they bring it up? Was she for it? Was she against it? I don't know. Obviously, there must have been a discussion about it. But yes, it also goes to, no matter in what context it was discussed, it also goes to what level these two guys have taken this woman, you know, beyond common sense, beyond just about every boundary or barrier most of us would set in dealing with people like people like Matt and Sweat.
Okay, ABC News crime and terror analyst Brad Garrett with us. Brad, thank you so much. We again are reporting breaking news that one of two escaped inmates from a prison in upstate New York after being on the run for 21 days. Richard Matt shot and killed by authorities. David Sweat still believed to be on the run at this point. Again, Richard Matt, an escaped prisoner on the run for 21 days, shot and killed somewhere near the border with Canada. ABC's Lindsay Davis will have much more on this story coming up tonight on World News with David Muir. And you can keep up with this story in real time by downloading the ABC News app and storing this story for exclusive updates on the go. I'm Carolyn Costello in New York.